Welcome to Next on the Tee with Chris Mascaro, the show where you get the inside access to the best minds in the game. Each week, Chris has the privilege of chatting with top instructors, legendary players, course architects, and industry insiders. If you're looking to improve your game, gain a new perspective, or just hear some incredible golf stories, you are indeed in the right place.
You see, Chris, let me tell you something. I haven't spoken to a press man in my life that is knowledgeable, seriously, as you are. Never.
You do such a great job. It kind of makes me feel good all of a sudden.
You do so much for the game. You're so kind to all of us that are out there in the game. You know, we need more people like you in the game of golf.
Thank you for pressing play. Now, grab your clubs, step up to the tee, and let's get started. This is Next on the Tee.
Hey, Next on the Tee Nation. Thanks for tuning in to what is a very special segment of Next on the Tee. I recently had the privilege of getting to spend about an hour with a legend in our game, and that legend is Peter Kostis. As you guys know, Peter is one of the very best instructors in our game, and on top of that, a legend in the broadcast industry because he spent years working for USA Network and CBS Sports, providing us with not only great player analysis, he was down there on the course, so we got a lot of great analysis from him, but on top of that, he married that with giving us all playing lessons. He did that for about 30 years and gave us all so much enjoyment. Not only, like I say, for what we were viewing on the CBS broadcast, and he's made every broadcast infinitely better because he was down there describing all the action for us, but then helping us improve our own games from what we saw the pros do. I mean, it was unprecedented in the broadcast industry. Ever since CBS Sports robbed us of both he and Gary McCord and the great things that they did for every telecast, I mean, it just hasn't been the same. In my opinion, it has gone straight downhill, and they have been struggling ever since. And certainly we're not going to get the great content that Peter gave us week in and week out. But over the next hour or so, you're going to hear a lot of really good things about Peter and his career. We spend a lot of time talking about how he did make every broadcast better. We talk about his career going from an assistant pro to being one of the first instructors at Golf Digest golf schools, and how he grew his career and the people that he met, and the great Ben Wright, who you guys know I love and miss dearly. So we're going to get into all of those things. You're going to have a lot of great stories. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Okay, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our good friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. TribLive.com is the leading news website for Western Pennsylvania with news around the clock. Pittsburgh pro sports coverage, a high school sports network, a podcast network, which you can find Next on the Tee on. So go out and bookmark TribLive.com or download the Trib Live app for free and stay up to date with all the news in Western Pennsylvania and this show. I also want to talk about our friends over at the Pittsburgh Brewing Company and Iron City Beer, a brand that I have loved my whole life and started drinking when I was 21 years old, of course. Whether you're a hacker or a scratcher, the secret to a successful day on the links is knowing when it's time to grab an iron, even if that means keeping it in the bag till the 19th hole. If it's been a while since you've reached for Pittsburgh staple beer, it's time to revisit Iron City. Thanks to their incredible new facility in Creighton, the best-tasting Iron City beer ever made is now available at a course near you. Iron City pairs well with any lie and sky and serves as a friendly reminder that there's always next round. Iron City Beer, best enjoyed while enjoying life. And folks, this year, get ready to experience the game like you've never experienced it before at the Keep. It's the brand new Bill Bergen and Reese Jones co-designed course up at Macklemore. Nestled high atop Lookout Mountain, the Keep offers breathtaking vistas that are even more spectacular in person than they are in the pictures and the videos. With its challenging layout and awe-inspiring views, every round there is an unforgettable adventure. Whether you're taking on the signature holes or just soaking in the scenery, the Keep is where your best golf meets nature's finest backdrop. So grab your clubs and join us up at Macklemore this year. The Keep is open for preview play and it's waiting for you. But you gotta hurry now because spots and availability are filling up fast. So don't wait. Check out both courses, the Highlands and the Keep, for yourself online at themacklemore.com. And then do yourself and your buddies, or yourself and your family a solid by getting your spot reserved now. And experience distance and forgiveness all at once with the new QI35 driver from TaylorMade. QI35 is designed to give golfers more distance from more of the face while maintaining maximized forgiveness through high MOI designs. Whether you're looking for low spin and maximum workability or easy launch and plenty of adjustability, it's available in low spin, core, and max models. QI35 also has a full assortment of fairway woods and rescues to deliver distance and forgiveness throughout the top end of your bag. Check them all out online at TaylorMadeGolf.com.
The honor is yours. Tee it up. Let's go. I'm happy to be here.
So, Peter, I always like going back to the beginning with a first-time guest on the show. I heard that you got hooked on the game when your cousin asked you to go play golf with him, and then you had never played before at that point. A couple of great shots later, the hook was set. Is that accurate?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, I had a cousin who came over from Greece, and he played golf. He was a little older than I was, and he decided to take me there one time, and I went back a second time, and from then on, I really enjoyed it. I was always, I played team sports growing up. I played all kinds of sports, but my personality was such that if I played poorly and the team won, I couldn't be really 100% happy. And if I played great and the team lost, I couldn't be 100% upset. So I realized that I really looked for a sport of an individual nature so that I could, assume responsibility for playing great or playing poorly, whatever the case may be. So that kind of led me into golf.
And Peter, I heard something that's very unique about you, that when you were learning to make yourself better, you realized along the way how to help get others to play better. Is that why teaching the game was the route you ultimately decided to take?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Maine, which is not exactly a golfing hotbed in the country, and it was obviously pre-internet, pre-YouTube and whatnot. So information was sparse, to say the least. And so it was a kind of a trial and error process, trying to make myself better. And in that process, I learned. I was fortunate as I got older and went to college. I had an engineering education, and I learned logic, and I learned, how to solve an equation as long as it had no more than one variable. So that kind of was the basis for my intrigue in learning the golf swing, learning how to play golf, trying to make myself better. And in that process, I learned some things that hopefully have made some other people play better.
I was watching your Arizona Sports Hall of Fame induction video, and in it you said you never had your sights set on anything. You just kept doing what you loved and did the best you could at it. And I tell you, Peter, the more people that I talk to, that's the secret of success. You follow what you love, do it the best that you can, and success will ultimately find you. Is that how it ended up working out for you as well?
Well, I'm a firm believer, and I taught my wife and I have two boys. They're in their 30s now, and I tried. The one word I preached to them was passion. Be passionate about something, whatever it is, and you'll learn how passion can drive you to success. And so I had a passion, for golf. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I just kept pursuing it, and one door would close, another door would open. I'd go through the open door, and then another door would close, and another one would open, and so it led me down my career. But it was just a deep passion to get better and to learn and to try and be as successful as I could possibly be at whatever it was I was doing.
Peter, you were one of the first instructors for the Golf Digest golf schools. How were you able to go from being a young instructor, an assistant professional up there in Maine, to landing the gig with Golf Digest?
Well, when I realized that I wanted to do something in golf, and I also realized that basically I was from Southern Maine, and December through beginning of April, I was not necessarily good golf weather unless you wanted to play in 10 inches of snow. So I had some relatives in Delray Beach, Florida. I decided to go down and stay with them in the wintertime. And I managed to get a job. I need mini tours back then were a joke. I mean, they were random, they were inconsistent, they were not paying very well. So I had to get a job to support myself, and that ended up being as an assistant professional. What the golf course back then was called the Hamlet in Delray Beach, Florida. And as luck would have it, Jim Flick was hired to be the director of instruction there. I met Jim. He saw that I had a passion for teaching, and the golf schools from Golf Digest were started by Bob Toski, and he brought on Jim Flick, and then that was my introduction. And then I came on board with the Golf Digest schools in like 1974, and then Davis Love Jr. was added after me, and then we were off and running. It was a um, great learning experience for me. Obviously, being around other really good teachers, and as a result of that, and the fact that we would have 36 students a day, uh, and like 9 or 10 minutes with each student, we learned very quickly how to cut through the BS and try to get them to do something better than what they were doing before. So I learned I learned a shortcut method to helping people get better because time was a huge constraint.
And Peter, as your career grows, you go from teaching one person or a class of students to walking the fairways of the PGA Tour with a microphone in your hand, not just as an on-course analyst, but really teaching all of us how to play better. When did you have the thought that, yeah, I can call what I see from the players out there playing on tour, but I can also add instruction that's going to make every amateur a little bit better?
Well, I mean, I always considered myself a teacher first and a broadcaster second, and I still think of it that way. And I was very fortunate. In my first TV gig was the 1989 Ryder Cup at the Belfry, and your listeners may not know this, but up until then, the Ryder Cup was a time by the PGA of America on ABC network, and ABC carried golf back then. And so, but they had to pay to get the Ryder Cup on. Well, in 1989, they decided they were going to charge a rights fee, and ABC, NBC, CBS, they all passed on it. They didn't want to pay for the right to do the Ryder Cup. And a fledgling cable company named USA Network was trying to break into sports, was trying to break into golf. They wanted to do early round coverage, which was not a thing back in the '89, and so they hired Gary McCord, me, Ben Wright, a guy named Jim Simpson, who was a football announcer. He played the part of Jim Nance, and off we were at the '89 Ryder Cup. And then subsequent to that, I think USA paid like $225,000 for the rights fees. Subsequent to that '89 Ryder Cup, which was a 14-14 tie and really quite compelling, uh, NBC came in and paid 10 million for the next five Ryder Cups. So that was where the Ryder Cup, I think, was really accepted into modern golf.
So I have to ask you because Ben Wright became a wonderful friend of this show. I had him on countless times over the 12 years that I've done this show, obviously early on. But I know that you spent some time with Ben, I'm sure, throughout the course of your career. Give me your favorite Ben Wright
This is not an X-rated podcast, is it? No,
story.
Bentley was just a treasure. I mean, he really was. He was eloquent. He was at times verbose, but got his point across, and at times very succinct and got his point across. He was he was a true linguist, and as such, I think that plus his accent made him phenomenal on television. My favorite Ben Wright story probably was the time that he was late for rehearsal, and Frank Trakinian the godfather of golf on TV, was our producer. And the one thing he insisted on was that you had to be ready for rehearsal 5 minutes before rehearsal was to start. If you showed up on time, you were late. And so we have rehearsal, and Frank calls for everybody. Kostis, you there? Yep. McCord, you there? Yep. Ben Wright, you there? Silence. Goes through the other announcers with Pat Summerall and Ken Venturi. Ben Wright, you there yet? No. Silence. And as it turned out, Ben was a race car driver, as you may know, early on in life, and had a crash and lost his teeth. And so he had he had fake teeth, and he went to the bathroom, and he had a cold, and he coughed, and he spit his dentures out into the toilet.
Oh,
And so it took him a while to retrieve them and clean them up and get out of the hotel and get to the rehearsal, which was actually, he missed the entire rehearsal. But we had a great laugh that night at dinner at Bentley's expense.
Peter, I've heard you say, I don't teach golf. I don't teach the golf swing. I teach people. Talk about what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, everybody is unique. And I will say this. I always say unique. I never say very unique, because I said very unique one time in front of Frank Trukinian, and he called me into his office and dressed me down. And he said, son, if you're going to do this, you have to learn to speak English correctly. There is no such thing as very unique. Either you are unique or you're not, but you can't be very unique. There are no adjectives to unique. So to this day, I've never said very unique except explaining that story. But each person is different, and they want to get better. And ultimately, they don't really care what it takes to get better. They just want to get better. And so I had to learn, and it's actually my motto of teaching, is that there's no one swing for everybody, but everybody needs one swing. And so I learned back then what I consider to be the art of reading people, identifying their strengths and weaknesses, their physical strengths, their limitations, their mobility limitations, whatever it may be, their age. And I learned how to construct a golf swing that they could execute. So that's why I say that I don't teach the golf swing. I don't teach a method. I don't teach anything. I just teach people. I teach people how to play better golf. And I think that's becoming a lost art, quite frankly. I think we've instruction has changed over the years to now, we have methods all over the place, and methods will always help a certain portion of the population. It'll be neutral for another portion of the population, and it will hurt other people. So that's why I don't like methods per se, because you're asking the person to fit into the method rather than creating a method for that person.
So, Peter, looking back over the course of your career, your time as a teacher, your time as a broadcaster, and out on the golf course, how have those things changed? How has teaching and TV announcing changed over the years?
Well, I'll start with TV. I'll start with teaching first. We used to have to teach ourselves because there weren't very many teachers, and you learned. We didn't even have driving ranges. That's how old I am. We had a shag bag, and it took me forever to get 50 decent balls in my shag bag. So when I would go practice, I had rules. First rule was don't lose the damn ball. And then the second rule was don't have to walk over hell's half acre trying to pick them all up. So, we learned the game from the target, which was the shag bag. We learned from the target back to the club head, up to the grip, up the arms, down to the body. So we learned the game from the target back. And today, with all of the cameras, all of the video, all of the launch monitors, and so on and so forth, I think that's a lost art. There are a few of us left, like Butch Harmon, who are of that same age, and But otherwise, people are learning from the body out. They're learning how to move their body. They're learning how to, if they move their body correctly, they assume the club will move correctly. If the club moves correctly, they assume the ball will go where they want it to go. And the net result is the ball will go to the target. Well, we played it backwards to that. We did everything we could to make the ball go to the target, whatever that meant. And then we didn't worry about what the body was doing. It was funny because when you practiced, we had a camera. Somebody would take some snapshots, and then you'd have to take it to the drugstore, and you'd have to get it developed, and it would be 4 or 5 days later before you could see the pictures of your swing, and by then you'd gone through 4 different swing changes, right? You didn't. You said, well, I'm not doing that anymore. So we had to learn intuitively. We had to learn instinctively, and now I see a lot of people being taught because of statistics, because of numbers and whatnot. And to me, that's not golf. Golf, while stats can be important in golf, I think golf is primarily an art form that's to be played and enjoyed outdoors, and it's nebulous. It's not concrete beams going back and forth, right?
So let's take that a step further, because I've had Hal Sutton on this show a number of times, and Hal talks about back when he was coming into the game, you had to, what he called, dig it out of the dirt. You had
Yep.
to look and see what the ball flight was doing. You had to look and see what your divot was doing. You really had to figure it out on your own based on what you saw when the ball got up in the air. It seems like, and he and I've had this conversation, that that's not the most important thing anymore. You talk about how we have all this data now. We have all the different bells and whistles with smash factors, and you can see everything through flight scope and all of that, so that you've got all of that information in front of you. But that is, to your point, that feels like we're working the body and then seeing what happens, instead of seeing what happens and trying to figure it out the other way. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, and this sounds like a old man yelling at the clouds, but it's not. It's meant to help people understand what they need to do to get better, right? And a teacher gives a student, he looks at a launch monitor, and the modern teachers don't ever. I mean, they can't see the golf swing in real time. We were forced to be able to see the golf swing in real time. We were forced to be able to see the club head and the position at the top and the position on the downswing and the plane of the swing and all that stuff. We had to train our eyes how to see it because that was the only thing we had. Now people look at the numbers. Say, oh, you're coming 6 degrees outside in, and we got to cut that down. We got to cut it down to 2, and so do this and this, and the player tops the ball to the left or shanks it to the right, and the teacher goes, yeah, see, your numbers were better there. That was only 2 degrees out to the end. Well, hell, the student didn't get any better. The golf ball didn't go to the target, and so they were teaching numbers and trying to make people look better on the computer, but the golf ball wasn't going anywhere near the target. I never understood why a teacher would accept golf balls flying off into the netherland, uh, and assume that his student was getting better, right? It's just a different way of playing, and quite frankly, when you learn from the target back, Chris, you go to the club face and you learn it's hand-eye club face coordination in golf. It's not just hand-eye coordination. And you have to learn how to feel the club face. You have to learn how to know where it is in your golf swing. And then you train your hands to control that club face. And then you control your arms. And then you get the body to add more and more into it, right? And so now you've got a complete game because you've trained your hands how to control the club face. That means you can learn how to chip. That means you can learn how to hit bunker shots. You can learn finesse. You can learn half shots, knockdown shots, whatever. But training the hands, and Sam Snead taught me this. He goes, son, there's like 2 things you got to know in golf. You got to know how to control your hands, and you got to know how to turn. If you can't turn, you can't play. And so we learned that way, and in the process of trying to develop a full golf swing, we also developed a short game, imagination and all kinds of things.
So let's take that last piece a little bit further. Speaking of Sam Snead and trying to get a better turn, for those of us that are north of 50 or just struggling to get a better turn in our backswing, I watched some of the things that you've done and talk about one of the things we don't do anymore. It's like we're all like statues up there. We address the ball and our foundation just stays steady as a rock. But Sam didn't do, and it's something that I saw you do, is lifting up that left heel, which allows everything else to turn a little bit better, and then coming down and pressing with the left heel back into the ground. I think that's a lost art that I saw Sam do, and I saw you do as well.
Well, I mean, for 400 years, golfers played with the left heel coming up. If you were a right-handed golfer, obviously the opposite for a left-handed golfer. But for 400 years, people played with the rhythm, left heel up to facilitate a better turn, left heel down to start the downswing. So your body picked up the rhythm of your hands and arms going back, and if you wanted to go back far enough, you had to get off your left heel, and then your hands and arms picked up the rhythm of your feet coming down, and that's the way golf was played. And then somewhere in the late '80s and early '90s, when what I call the 3 M's of teaching, methods, marketing, and money, became sacrosanct, that people started to develop methods and do this and do that. And then all of a sudden, left heel down became a fundamental. I missed that memo. I don't know. I don't know where that started. I don't know why it started. But in my opinion, you have to learn to play with the left heel up to earn the right to play with the left heel down. Now, if you're 23 years old, 6'2", 30-inch waist, and you're mobile and you've got lots of flexibility, and you can play with your left heel down, God bless you. Go ahead. That's fine. But as you get older and your spine stiffens up and your hips get tighter and so on and so forth, you still have to be able to turn, and lifting the left heel is a great tension reliever and a motion creator so that you can turn enough going back that you can make a damn backswing and hit the golf ball solidly.
Peter, looking back over the course of your career and all the wonderful experiences that you've had and the joy that you've brought to so many people by helping them play better, it has to be fulfilling for you when you get to sit back and maybe reflect on your career, but have some quiet time and look at all of the joy that you have brought to so many people. Do you find the opportunity to look at that and find the fulfillment in all the things that you have done for other people?
That's an interesting question, Chris. I never gave it a thought when I was actually working for CBS or doing anything TV related. When Gary McCord and I were let go by CBS at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, then COVID came, right? And so then we were locked in. I went from traveling 30, 40 weeks a year to, staying in my house 24/7. It was a time to reflect. And subsequent to that, when I go out now, I meet a lot of people, and they're very kind and they're very nice, and they are constantly referring to what they learned with the Konica Minolta Swing Vision camera. And I never appreciated it. I knew I was doing something right. I knew CBS started slow motion analyzing on golf that went into other sports. I knew we were groundbreakers in that arena, but I didn't really understand the impact it had on people in general until after I retired, and they would come up to me, we really missed that swing stuff because we learned something that we could go out and try the next weekend when we played golf. And so I came to appreciate it, Chris, after the fact. And I was very, very appreciative of a guy named Tony Petiti, who was a executive at CBS Sports and an avid golfer. And they did a study, and they said they found out why people wanted to watch the PGA Tour on television. Primarily, they wanted A, to watch the competition, B, to watch a favorite player that they had, and then C, to learn something that they could take to the golf course. And so when that started, and we started to broach the subject of analyzing golf swings, he went out and found the camera, and that was genius, and that allowed me to do what I wanted to do. And back then the telecast was a lot slower, and I was given up to 2 minutes to do a swing analysis with the camera in the early days. I did it for 16 years, and the telecast changed so much in those 16 years that by the end, the whole thing became bastardized because I was given literally 15 seconds, and in 15 seconds you cannot do anything of any consequence. So I was pretty much down on doing the swing analysis toward the end because they wouldn't allow me the time to do it correctly.
So
So that's kind of the evolution of the instruction on TV. It's nowhere to be found these days.
that's where I wanted to go next. It's not there anymore. I mean, to me, that's what's been lost since you left the booth and the course. I remember back in the day, Ken Venturi used to do his stroke savers piece. Those things are now not a part of the broadcast. So I think the broadcasts have not only lost you and your expertise and the things that you would see that we wouldn't see when you're out on the course talking to the players or commentating on what you were witnessing, but also the instruction that you would give, the instruction Ken would give. To me, that's a big piece that has really taken the broadcast, from my perspective, back down a level.
Yeah, I mean it's changed. All right. Some people say for the better, some people will say for the worse, but it has changed. And so have people. Like I once did a 27-page instruction piece for Golf Digest. I mean that's unheard of today. No one likes long form instruction in a golf magazine. Over the years, they came to say basically what they said point blank was, if you can't read it while you're going to the bathroom, I don't want to put it in the magazine because that's where people's attention spans are. And I never understood whether that kind of change created the lack of attention or the attention span, or whether the attention span demanded it. I never quite got that figured out. But right now, no. Players can't do it, quite frankly, because players don't know the multiple numbers of golf swings that a teacher needs to know if they're going to help, different people. All the player knows is what he or she would have done in that situation. And that's not instruction. That's just telling them how they would have done it, right?
Right.
So if it was to ever come back, you'd have to find a younger teacher who understands the golf swing, understands how to communicate it to the viewer, and that they have to give him time, or her give her time to get it done. But I don't see that happening because we've got so much uh, input from social media. We want shots. We want shots. We want shots. Well, you know what? The show is cluttered with shots. There's no context. There's no storytelling. There's no instruction. There's none of that stuff. So, um, it's just changed, Chris. That's all I can say. I can't say it's better or worse. But it's different.
Peter, you talk about they would have to find a younger teacher, and that immediately pops into my head. Well, why? I mean, one of the things that I didn't understand when you and Gary left CBS and that whole thing happened, it felt to me like they were chasing younger, and I never understood why, because they weren't going to find somebody that was better than you or Gary. They weren't going to find somebody that had more experience or knowledge than you or Gary, or the style in which you guys presented information to all of us. I felt like I felt like we were back in the '80s, and Coke was going to go to New Coke just because they felt like the 1% of the market that started drinking Pepsi, they needed to chase that for some reason, and that was a disaster. And I feel like since you guys have left, the broadcasts haven't recovered. I just never understood why chasing younger.
Well, newsflash, that was initiated by the PGA Tour, and in particular Jay Monahan. Jay Monahan issued an edict that they wanted CBS to get younger. Gary and I were the two oldest, and we were our our hard contract was up. We had a 2-year option, and for 30 years, no one had ever, how do I say this, double negative, no one had ever not had their option picked up. Gary and I were the first two. And Sean McManus told us that we were getting stale, whatever, but it was a euphemism for Jay Monahan wanted younger former tour players on the telecast so that they would speak nicely of the current crop of tour players. And he also felt like they were more relatable to the younger players coming up, notwithstanding the fact that I was teaching a bunch of them. So I was obviously able to relate to them. But yeah, that's where that all started. And I think that morphed into NBC, getting rid of Gary Koch and Roger Maltby. I think it was initiated by the PGA Tour, is what I was told, and the networks wanted to keep their contracts, so they acquiesced. That's it.
None of that feels good to me.
It doesn't feel particularly good to me either. But I was never going to go past my 2-year option. That's what Gary and I wanted to do. We wanted to take the last 2 years, and as it turned out, it was probably good for us with COVID and all that stuff that we didn't do it. I was, and I suppose if I'm being completely honest, on some days I'm still upset about the way it happened, but I'm less upset about the fact that it happened, because I find today's telecast to be not enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
There's too many voices. There's everybody talking, and nobody's saying anything because they got no time, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know anything about, how producers look at the amount of time given for any one comment, but I know what is important to viewers like me, and the information and the way it is presented and how enjoyable it makes the broadcast. And I feel like they've been searching ever since you guys left, and they haven't found anything, and the broadcasts have suffered immensely for it.
Well, and I think also, first of all, you're right. That goes without saying. I mean, you're 100% right. But they're listening. Golf is not a fast game. Never has been, never will be. Hockey's a fast game. Basketball's a pretty quick game. Baseball's trying to speed up. Football is what it is. But golf has never been a fast sport. So going from shot to shot to shot, especially with 9 announcers on the team now, you got 3 people on the ground, you got 5 people in the tower, plus you got an interviewer, and so on and so forth. So you've got, at a minimum, you have 3 people trying to talk over every single shot, and that to me is cluttering. It's confusion. One person says A, and the next person tries to one up them and say A plus B. Then the next person tries to one up the first 2 and say A plus B plus C. Meanwhile, the person's hit the shot, and rather than the anticipation of where the ball might go or where end up, you got people calling the shot in the air. It's like, it's a visual medium. It's not an audio. It's not radio, right? So it's very, I don't know. The show is cluttered to me. It's cluttered with commercials. It's cluttered with sponsored segments, and it's cluttered with announcers spewing stats and trying to sound smart. And there's no context. There's no storytelling, and there's no instruction.
Peter, I want to get your thoughts, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I think we all sort of have PGA Tour, Live. We're exhausted from everything that's been talked about, and we're all waiting for something that's never going to happen. But, for 2+ years now, Jay Monahan has been telling us that talks are progressing with Yasser Al-Rumayyan and the PIF and the Live Tour, and they're going to come together and they're going to merge, that sort of thing. And Peter, I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Live doesn't sign a deal with the Australian government to extend their agreement with the Adelaide tournament to through 2031, bring in former 76ers CEO Scott O'Neill, sign a big YouTuber influencer like Rick Shields, to only have all of this go away 5 minutes later. I don't see it happening. Now, look, senior editors and writers from Golf Magazine, they have suggested something that I think makes sense. Maybe we get 3 or 4 tournaments a year that aren't opposite anything else, where we can have some crossover and we can see the best players in the world playing against one another besides during the 4 majors. I don't know. What are your thoughts? How do you see this thing sort of playing out?
Well, Gary McCord and I have a podcast on YouTube where there is instruction, by the way. And we've covered this ad nauseum. And Gary and I agree that I think the net result of this is that, first of all, LIV's not going away. Anybody who thinks it's going away doesn't know the Saudis and their intention with worldwide sports and the role they want to play in worldwide sports going forward. So I think that the best thing that could happen for golf is to kind of go back to the 80s, in the sense that you had the European Tour and the players, the Faldos, the Woosnams, the Langers, all those guys, they rarely came to America and played on the PGA Tour. They basically stayed on the European Tour except for the majors. And that set up a really good competition in the Ryder Cup between the Europeans and the Americans. And so what I see happening, and what I would like to have happen, is I'd like to have DP Tour taken over by LIV. They run the DP World Tour. They make it worldwide. They run their LIV tournaments however they see fit. They merge it into the DP stuff so the players can get world ranking points. And we have a competition to the PGA Tour. Now, the PGA Tour wants to be a monopoly. There's no question about that. But I don't think the PGA Tour being a monopoly for golf is good for golf worldwide. I just don't. But if you had the LIV players primarily playing in the LIV tournaments and the DP World Tour, then you had the PGA Tour players playing on their tour. And then you somehow you get together for, pick a number, 10 or 12 events a year. You compromise and you have, the top 50 from each tour, or however you want to dole it out. They get together 10 or 12 times a year to compete in elite events. You add that together with the 4 majors, and now you've got, 15, 16 tournaments a year where all the best are competing. We have to get the best competing together again. There's no 2 ways around that, because what we have right now is not enjoyable. The player A wins this many times, but the argument is, well, he wouldn't have won if those guys were playing, and vice versa. So you have to figure out a way to get them all to play together. I don't think it's going to happen under one umbrella. I hope it happens under 2 umbrellas. The LIV, DP World Tour, whatever you want to call it. They have their umbrella. They run their events. PGA Tour runs events under their umbrella, and they get together 10 or 12 times a year for super events, and we're off and running. But that's what I'm hoping for. I think competition is good. We said on the podcast, Muhammad Ali was phenomenal, but Muhammad Ali really became extra phenomenal when he found Joe Frazier, and they had the triumvirate of fights. You need good guys and bad guys. Half the people tuned in to see Ali get knocked out. Half the people tuned in to see Ali knock someone else out. But 100% of the people tuned in. And that's what we need in golf. We need people tuning in, half of them wanting LIV players to win the event, half of them wanting a PGA Tour player to win the event, but they're all tuning into the event, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I see it going. Hopefully, they can get some resolve to the situation. But it's my understanding that the meeting in Washington, what was it, last week or the week before, did not go well at all. It was a disaster.
Peter, a couple more before I let you go. And speaking of going back to the 80s, I've asked several guys out on the Champions Tour, plus some legends of the game, would we be here today if Dean Beeman was still commissioner? And to a man, they said no. Do you agree with that?
That's interesting. See, I'm of the opinion that Dean Beeman was a visionary. He saw the future of golf. He understood golf because he was a great player. Um, and he was a visionary. He was the guy that bought the land in Scottsdale that was 20 miles out of the center of town in the middle of nowhere, that became TPC Scottsdale. And look what's happened to that event, that tournament, right? So I think Dean, if Dean were able to stay young and energetic and not age like the rest of us, I think he could have done a phenomenal job because he really understood golf. He passed the torch to Tim Fincham, and Fincham understood business. He was a lobbyist out of D.C., not really a golfer, didn't understand the game of golf. He lucked out because he came along when a young guy named Tiger Woods came along. And so they used Tiger Woods as a sledgehammer to everybody, to the viewers, to the sponsors, to the networks. They said, take it or leave it. This is what we're going to do. We're going to charge you more because we got arguably the best known athlete in the world right now. And so if you want to be a part of this, you're going to do X, Y, Z. So they gave up on trying to make the viewer experience better. They gave up on trying to make the networks happy and produce a better product. They gave up on their players because they had Tiger. And then Fincham passed it along to Jay Monahan. Now, Jay Monahan's not a golfer either. I don't think he understands the game of golf as well as Fincham did. And so I may be the contrarian here to all those people you talk to, but I think the game has suffered because the commissioners have been more business oriented rather than really understanding golf. Golf is a unique sport. And if you don't play golf, if you're not involved in golf, you don't get it. And so we got people running the game right now, and it's across the board. I'm sorry, but it's the USGA, it's the RNA, it's everybody, PGA of America. There's people running those entities that don't really know golf like I think they should know golf. And so as a consequence, I think the whole world of golf has suffered from this. So I would take the counterpoint and say, no, I think it would have been better if Beeman or somebody like Beeman would have continued on as commissioner.
Yeah, and I think that's what those guys were saying. If Dean Beeman were still here, if he was still the commissioner of the tour, we wouldn't
I'm
be
sorry.
in this.
I misunderstood you. I thought that we wouldn't be. Okay, I completely misinterpreted what you said. My apologies. I think Dean Beeman would have been great for golf during this time, and he would have understood the big picture, and he wouldn't have tried to be necessarily a monopoly.
Right. Yep. Peter, switching gears, we're about a month shy of this year's Masters tournament. You got to spend a lot of time at Augusta National. What are some of your favorite memories from covering that event?
Well, I spent 10 years on the 10th hole. I spent 13 years on the 13th hole, and I spent 7 years on the 15th hole. The reason I stayed at 10 was because it was the first playoff hole back in the day, and I prayed for a playoff. I really wanted to call a playoff on the 10th hole. Never happened. First year I moved to 13, we had a playoff at 10. So go figure. um, the Masters is it's unique. It's both what's really good about golf and it's also what's bad about golf. I mean, they control the golf world. They get their greens up to 14, and then every greens committee chairman at every club in the world wants greens at 14, and so on. But I was fortunate. I was there for Tiger's first win in '97. I was there when Tiger took the lead on the 15th hole in 2019 to win his last Masters. And so that to me was the golden era of golf on TV. And Gary and I and the CBS crew were fortunate to be around during that time and cover it. But there's no one standout moment for me. There are a bunch of situations that were extraordinary. I mean, Mickelson hitting it out of the the straw on 13 to 3 feet. And then missing the eagle putt. I mean, that was great theater. Um, so yeah, I enjoyed all my time at the Masters while I was on the air. The other times I was deathly afraid of doing something or saying something wrong, so I didn't enjoy that. Because you never know when you screwed up at Augusta until they told you.
Yes, I can imagine. Obviously with the situation with Gary, but I think you got to be on pins and needles a little bit, right? Did it go okay? Am I all right? Did I say everything okay? That's got
I
to be
mean,
tough.
yeah, and but you got to be yourself, right? I mean, the two things well, three things that disappointed me the most about the way CBS handled certain things. One, the way they handled Ben Wright's dismissal from the LPGA championship uh, at in Pennsylvania. That bothered me because they left Ben out to dry.
Yeah.
They hung him out there and they didn't support him at all. The second was CBS didn't support Gary. When Tom Watson wrote his letter of disapproval about Gary talking about bikini wax and body bags, that CBS never stood up for Gary, and that bothered me. Back then, that's when I learned that we were just commodities. We weren't as much of a part of a team as we thought we were, and we were taught to be. And then obviously the third thing is the way they let Gary and I go. I mean, that was just, we're going to clean out your cubby hole. We're going to find somebody else. We'll just plug somebody else into the cubby hole and off we go. They didn't have any really regard for, 30 years for me and 34 or 5 for Gary. Right. So that bothered me.
Yeah, that piece with Ben Wright really bothered me. Like I say, he joined me on this show early on many, many times, and he became a very dear friend. And all he wanted towards the end of his life was to be able to do one more Masters. And I thought,
Yep.
you know what? How can you not do that for Ben Wright? And, crickets for stuff like that. And
Well,
that always hurt me.
political correctness and the woke culture has made its way into the golf world. I mean, we have a president of CBS Sports now who's was forced into. I don't know if I should say this or not. He was forced into diversifying the CBS golf team. That's all I'm going to say. And so they went for political correctness and they went for approval on the internet and social media rather than doing what was right by the broadcast. That's all I'm going to say on that subject before I get my butt in big trouble.
Understood. Before I let you go, remind our listeners again how they can stay up to date with the great things that you and Gary are out there doing. Watch your shows, plus follow you online or on social media.
Yeah, well, it's Costas and McCord off their rockers. Our very first show, it's on YouTube, and our very first show, we sat in rocking chairs commiserating about our retirement, and we decided we had to get up and out of the rocking chairs, and it's really been refreshing because, especially for the last few years at CBS, our life existed in 6-second increments. That's all we had time to say, and we couldn't say anything intelligent in that time frame. So, it was getting to be difficult. But now with the podcast, we control everything. If we want to talk about something for 10 minutes or 45 minutes, we can do it, and we can go in depth, and we can present different viewpoints and so on and so forth. And my instruction is not restricted to 30-second tips, which I despise. Um, I think people go down the rabbit hole of watching tips on YouTube, and all they do is dig themselves a bigger hole with their golf game and don't get any better. So it's Costas and McCord off their rockers on YouTube, and I am on X, as we call it now, under my name, so people can reach me there. But it's fun, and Gary and I enjoy it because we're doing what we want to do the way we want to do it.
And you do a great job at it, by the way. I enjoy every episode that you guys have done. I think it's outstanding stuff. And it's what's missing in our telecasts and our broadcasts and really just sort of in our world in general, that you guys can come in and entertain us, plus teach us a lot of things and tell great stories. It's exactly what people like me are looking for. So thank you guys for continuing to do it.
Well, thank you very much. And we've always been contrarians, Chris, along the way. We've paid for it. But in this age of wanting everything in instantaneously, right? Want instant satisfaction, whatnot. We're going back to the old days. We're going back and we're telling stories, and we're going back and we're doing long form instruction and so on, because I think there's a place for it. I mean, it's like live golf, just because it's not for everybody doesn't mean it's for nobody, right? There's a place for it. And so there's a place for what we do on YouTube. It's certainly not on network television because they're all interested in making it quick and concise and clinical. But we go in depth and we have fun, kind of like your podcast.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Peter, it's been a huge thrill to get to spend some time with you. I hope we get this privilege again sometime soon.
You got it, Chris. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Take care, Peter. All the best to you and your family.
Thank you. You too.
See ya. That is the great Peter Kostis, folks. Any doubt about this man's greatness? Unbelievable last hour. What a privilege to get to spend an hour with Peter and learning more about his career and the things that got him into the game of golf, progressing through the game of golf, and then becoming just an absolute legend for what he has given us in instruction and in how he enhanced every single broadcast that he was a part of. Boy, it just hasn't been the same without he and Gary McCord. Peter made every broadcast, like I say, infinitely better because not only did he tell us in really vivid descriptions what we were seeing and not just the obvious for what we were seeing, but he also made us better along the way. So thank you so much to Peter Kostis for his time, for coming to be a part of the show. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a huge thrill for me, and I hope we get this privilege with him again before too long. So, folks, thank you for tuning into this very special segment of Next on the Tee. As I always say, you guys are the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. Until next time, hit 'em straight, my friends.